This is the Game Development Tools for Everyone talk that I gave at Gamescom Conference in 2022 in Cologne, Germany at the Koelnmesse. It was not recorded on site, so this is a recording that I've made at home. So just while I give the talk, imagine that I'm gesturing my hands like this, or like this, or like this. Credit for these photos is in the description. All right, and then with that, let's get started. Hi, I'm Robin-Yann and this is Game Development Tools for Everyone. Now, first of all, who am I? I'm Robin-Yann. I used to work at indie studios on games for console and PC. I was a co-founder of an indie studio for a little bit. I then did freelancing and consulting as a tool designer. I then became a AAA tool designer working at IO Interactive on the Glacier 2 editor on which the Hitman games are built. I then became a AAA tool designer at Guerrilla Games, working on the Decima editor on which the Horizon games are built. In the last 3.5 years, I've worked at Apple as a tool designer. I've now quit that job to become a workflow consultant and freelance tool designer once again. Now, getting to game development tools for everyone, basically a lot of barriers have been overcome in the last many years. For example, there's no need for expensive proprietary hardware anymore. If you want to just start building stuff, you can do that on your laptop or computer. And anyone can download an editor and engine, just for free, on the internet. And there's no need to have a publisher immediately. If you want to just start building stuff, you can. And there are schools for game development now. If you want to be taught in a classical way, you can do that. And there are tutorials all over the internet that explain to you certain concepts that you might need to make a game. And that's really, really cool. And all of that has resulted in some really neat stuff appearing over the years. Like, for example, Platformer Toolkit by Mark Brown, which is a 2D platformer that allows people to adjust the values of the platformer to, for example, make it feel nicer to play. And there's some whole narration that goes with this to explain to people how these certain values and these certain things can make it better or feel worse for this platformer. So people are learning through interactivity, which is really, really good. And then there's the Wisdom and or Madness of Crowds by Nicky Case, which, again, through interactivity, can teach people how certain thoughts might be very prevalent, while really they shouldn't be. For example, binge drinking, where a lot of people think binge drinking is a totally normal thing, which may be just because of the social web that they're in. So users get to create these social webs themselves by creating these lines or deleting these lines and then setting things up in such a way where everyone is thinking that binge drinking is a big thing, while really that's not the case. And then there's .Big Bang by Control-Z, which, for example, allows anyone to just click play in a browser and get into a 3D world right away. That's even multiplayer and start running around and doing things. It's really cool to see this kinds of stuff. And this is actually also a game editor, which we're going to get into more later. And of course, there's also the Unreal Engine by Epic Games, in which case this is also used for TV and movies. In this case, we can see it being used for The Mandalorian. And again, it's the interactivity here that's important, because they're using these big light screens to make the scene and lighting appear as if it's real. And because in Unreal Engine you can just adjust these things immediately and immediately get a lighting result, it's very good to use for these kinds of purposes. And in the end, we become what we behold. We shape our tools, and then our tools shape us. So it's really neat to see these kinds of tools appearing because it's shaping what we are doing and how we are doing things. It's allowing a new generation to make interactivity with game development tools. And that's really, really neat. And that interactivity is something that keeps popping up. The interactivity here is key because interactivity really is everywhere. For example, even on a text form, there's a kind of interactivity in a choose-your-own-adventure kind of way. Like, for example, a form asking, have you bought or sold a house this year? And if yes, you get these deductions, and if no, you don't. And for example, there's buying a train ticket at the station, where you get to decide where to go, which class you want to ride in, etc. All these things are interactive. And making these kinds of things has usually been not so easy. But things are getting much easier and easier, and this has already happened, for example, for websites. Where back in the day, you had to learn how to use HTML and just type it out manually and then hope that in the end it all worked well. And nowadays, you can just pop a couple of things in Squarespace and now you have a website and it just functions. That's really, really cool. But for game development tools, can anyone pick up and use these tools? And what can you bring up as issues to resolve? Like, if you want game development tools to be better, and specifically your tools to be better, what are things that you can bring up to improve them? And things are better, but what are the current barriers of entry? So let's take a look at that. What are the latest barriers of entry for game development tools? So the ones that I can talk about within 20 minutes are accessibility, performance, and scripting and programming. And by accessibility, I mean that very literally. Like, can you literally easily access these game development tools? So let's start out with that one. Let's take a look at the accessibility of game development tools. This is Twine. It's an editor that works in a browser. In this case, it's very simple. You type out some text, you give people options, and that brings you to different sides of text. So in this case, you can build a choose your own adventure very easily. And then you can instantly just build it and take a look at it and try it out. This is in a browser. It doesn't require an account. You can easily share the story with someone else then with a single link. It's very accessible, as in you can instantly start doing things with it. And it brings up these questions like, what if a psychologist could just make an experience for their client? Learning to interactivities is really, really powerful thing. So in that case, what if a psychologist could just make a specific situation that their client may have been in or is afraid of, and then can decide and make all these different choices so that they can see how the client would react to that and learn from it. That's really powerful, and anyone can just pick that up in Twine. Another example is, again, Big Bang, where in this case we do need an account to start building stuff, but again, it works in a browser. We can just click on it and start doing things. And then we are in a 3D editor in a browser, and we can start placing things and doing things. Again, it's super accessible. And again, we can then share this experience with someone else using a link. It's really, really fast, really, really accessible. And also, this is in a browser on a Mac in this case, but this can also be done on a phone. For example, this is a recording of my iPhone where I just click on a single link and I'm logged into my account. And I get the exact same options and can go to an empty world, and I can then start building things. It's this kind of accessibility that makes it really, really easy for anyone to just pick things up and start doing things with a game development tool. So, accessibility, literally. How do we resolve that as a barrier of entry? Is looking at things like having no account being necessary, having it work in a browser, having it work on a phone, and sharing access with a single link. If you have no account being necessary, it works in a browser, even a browser on a phone, and you can share access with a single link, you can see how incredibly accessible that is for many more people to pick these kinds of things up. Now, what is a second barrier of entry? So the second one is performance. And by performance, what we really mean is, on what hardware can this run? So let's take a look at the Steam hardware survey of June 2022. Now, this is a lot of information, but really what I want to focus on is this. The NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1060. We see almost 7% of users are using this card. It's the most used card on Steam in this case, which is mostly for games, so we can expect people to have or want at least powerful hardware. This is a little bit of an older card. It can run modern games pretty okay, but it's still a little bit of an older card. If you run a game development tool, you often need to run the game and the editor at the same time, which can be costly. So what is the cost of a powerful graphics card if we want to upgrade that card? For example, to a GTX 3090, one of the most powerful cards. Let's take a look at that in Germany versus in Brazil. So in Germany, on Amazon, we can see that that card costs 1,500 euros. With a minimum wage in Germany of 1,500 euros. So it's expensive, yes, but it's doable. If you really wanted to work for that, you could get this card. Let's take a look at Brazil. In this case, going to euros, that's 3,200 euros with a minimum wage of 200 euros. So we can see this is not as easy to get. We can't just rely on everyone having really powerful hardware. So the question that becomes is what if anyone in the world could just open up a game development tool anywhere on their hardware? And to do that, we need to make sure that the performance is really, really easy on low-end hardware. Now, I know at this point, some of you are thinking, yes, but we'll just grab a data center somewhere and put really powerful graphics cards in there, and then we just stream it to everyone so that nobody needs powerful hardware anymore. And yes, that's neat. I'm not saying to not do that. But let's take a look at the download speeds by country. This is from the Global Speed Index. And this is Mbps, so megabit per second, not megabyte per second. And worldwide, we can see it's about 30 for the mobile, and for wired, it's about 67. And we can see the countries in here are really kind of all over the place. This is from all over in the world. There isn't a particular section of the world that has much faster internet than other sections. It's kind of spread out everywhere. Now, there's probably one country in here that you all know, which is the United States. Very rich country, very modern country. So you think, well, we could just stream everything over there to anyone, right? Like, that should be totally doable. Why can't we just stream everything? Well, there's one thing: data caps. Data caps are basically a thing where if you use too much internet throughout a month, either the next few gigabytes you use are very costly, very slow, or don't show up at all. And I've lived there, and as a single person, I've hit data caps. So I can't imagine living with 3 other roommates, or just 4 people, 5 people in a home, and streaming everything everywhere all the time, because we would hit those data caps. So we can't just rely on streaming everything to everyone all the time. It's not a particularly durable solution until those kinds of internet issues are solved throughout the world, which is a huge ask. So, for performance, resolving that as a barrier of entry. What we're really looking at here is low hardware needs and small download sizes. If we can get those things for game development tools, it becomes much, much easier for a lot of people to use them. All right, let's take a look at the last barrier of entry, and that is scripting and programming. Now, we've seen over the years node graphs and visual scripting really expanding a lot. For example, in Unreal, Unity, etc., with things like Blueprints, Bolton, Playmaker. And really what this means, just to give you a visual example for coding versus visual scripting, is in code, similar to the HTML we saw earlier, you have to type it out exactly, you have to know exactly what to do, and you have to put things in exactly the right way. While with visual scripting, it's much more visual. You have these boxes, you line these boxes up, you put lines between them, and then you get interactivity and all kinds of things happening. Now that's really neat, but you still have to know exactly what to do. For example, here's the end result of a tutorial on the Unreal website on how to make a door swing open when you get close to it. So in this case, there's an on-component begin overlap. There's a door timeline component, a make rotator, a set relative rotation, a door target, and a on component end overlap. Now, if you don't know exactly how blueprints work or how this specific example works, you wouldn't have any idea about what to look at this and how this would work and what to do. Yes, you'd have to run through the whole tutorial to understand it and do it, but in that case, you're essentially still learning how to program within the system. It's been visualized, yes, and that's good, but you still have to know exactly what to do. If you have 2,000 nodes to choose from, and you need to put the exact 5 in the exact right order to make a particular event or a particular mechanic happen, then you're still going through the motions of learning how exactly the system works. It's only been visualized. So let's grab another example. Reality Composer by Apple. Now, I want to be very clear here is that I did work on this app, but I was not responsible for this feature. I was not a lead on this feature, so don't want to take credit for anything here. But I do want to show it off because I think this thing is really cool. For example, in this case, we add a custom behavior, and we want to add a proximity to camera, so we just get close to it. Now, what object is affected? We can say, for example, choose and this box, okay? The distance is 1 meter. Sounds good. What action do we want to have happen? We want it to move, rotate, or scale. All right, that sounds good. Oh, I can see that's moved. So let me just move it back into place. And then let's rotate it 90 degrees. Let's press the play button here. Yep, that works. All right, let's press play. And it rotates. And I can zoom out and zoom back in. Rotates again. And I can zoom out and zoom back in. And it rotates again. Now, that example of proximity to thing, this distance, want it to rotate 90 degrees, is really easy to understand. Anyone can look at that and kind of go, oh yeah, no, I can understand what is happening here or what should be happening. And I think that is really, really powerful. It's that kind of templating to make it much easier to understand and to try and do things. Another example is, again, .Big Bang, where we have all these templates in the bottom. And for example, this is a trampoline template. So if I jump on it, all right, it jumps me up. That's great. I can then go to the properties of it and then change how high it bumps me up. And if I jump on it again, I go much higher. All right, cool. So this kind of templating is really powerful to quickly do things. But I can then also go to the code and really look at how this works, why this works, and add more things to it if I wanted to, or really understand how this works. And it's that kind of really, really powerful stuff that can make it so much easier for people to understand programming. Because what if everyone can just learn from all these templates? You're really educating the next generation into programming. Because it's the templates and then that depth of really going into the code later that can really teach people how to do things. If you immediately throw the code at them, it becomes very difficult and you have to learn exactly how the system works, etc. And if you only give them the templates, then they are usually very, very limited in the things that they can do. But if you give them templates that then allow you to go into the code later, you can really get into this balance of teaching them how the things work and then allowing them to discover the depth of it. Another example is, for example, is Roblox, where we have, again, a lot of templates, a lot of scenes to choose from. So I choose this village scene. And I can then fly around it, take a look. And in this case, I want to try and place a trampoline again. So I search for a trampoline. And I drag that out and place it. And I see that a script has been added. Okay. Let's press play and see how this works. So there I am. And I can then jump onto the trampoline. And there we go. I'm jumping. Again, very, very simple to just try a thing out using templates. And not just the template. I can then go into the property panel here and sadly don't find anything to adjust. It's a bit of a shame, but okay. But I can go into this Explorer here and then go to the trampoline and find the script. And click on that, and then I see the code and see what can make this thing tick and what makes it happen. So again, it's this templating and then also allowing that depth that's really powerful. And of course, there's also Fortnite from Epic Games again, where again, we have a lot of starter islands, a lot of templates to choose from, a lot of initial things to try things out with, which is very, very cool. If we then decide on a particular location, we can also go into prefabs. So these are things that have been built before, and I can just place in one big chunk and then start editing them. And we can also find these things called devices, where we have, for example, vehicles and buttons and things that are interactable. So here's me placing an entire building in one click. That's really cool, really powerful. And here's me placing a button, and here's me placing a vehicle that already works right away. No need to script or do anything or understand how it works first. I can just start using it. And in this button, we can again adjust the properties, the initial state, visibility. Oh, when it's turned on, I want it to say hello. When it's turned off, I want it to say goodbye. Just something simple. Just want to adjust something simple. I can then start game. So when I walk to it, it says hello, it says goodbye when I click on it. All right, just works really nice. In this vehicle, I can just hop into it and I can use it right away because it's an existing working template that already does something and already knows exactly how this works, and I can do things with it. Now, sadly, I can't go into the depth of this right now, like with the blueprints and into the code. I can't do that in the creative mode of Fortnite. But we can see again that these templates are really powerful to just quickly do something with. So we're scripting and programming to resolve that as a barrier of entry. What's important here is templates, allowing a lot of templates to just easily and quickly do things and try things out. And having that ease of use with the templates, so just play stuff, see how it works, don't have to worry about exactly what it does, just trying things out. But also allowing that depth. Having only templates makes it too much of a toy, and only allowing that depth makes it much too complicated to start out with. It's having the templates and the ease of use to also allow that depth that's really powerful and can really get people into trying things out and working with things. If you talk with a lot of people, game developers especially nowadays, about how they started using game development tools, they probably talk about some game in the 90s or the 2000s where they could just go into it and start adjusting some values or start adjusting some things. And they notice like, oh, this is really cool. I want to do more of this stuff. It's become a lot harder in the last few years to just easily adjust really the core concepts of a game that fast. So, overcoming the new barriers of entry. The things I talked about are having no account being necessary, it working in a browser, it working on a phone, sharing access with a single link, low hardware needs, small download sizes, templates, ease of use, and allowing that depth. If we do these kinds of things, we can really make sure that there are game development tools for everyone and just usable. Because again, we become what we behold. We shape our tools, and then our tools shape us. So let's make really good tools. And that's game development tools for everyone. Thank you. I'd like to give a big thanks to these folks for giving me feedback on this presentation. Thank you very much. These are the sources that I used. And are there any questions? And considering this is a YouTube video, I can't actually take any questions here. But thank you very much for watching. You can find more of my stuff and more of my talks on www.rystorm.com. And you can follow me on Twitter @rystorm.